And welcome back. Thank you for staying with us on Sunday Live. Time for Game Plan 2017. I'll introduce my guests to you and our topic. To my far right is Peter Ndeng. He's the founder and chairman of Lead Africa Foundation. He's also a finance and economic development professional. Next to me is Ekuru Aukot, who's the leader of Third Way Alliance. And to my left is Herman Manyora, who's our resident analyst here on Game Plan 2017. And we're discussing the independent phenomena with special focus on those running for the presidency as independents. So let me start with a general question to both of you. I'll start with you, Kuru. Why did you choose to go independent and not to be aligned with any major political outfit?
Well, I'm actually surprised you're describing me as independent because I'm actually party sponsored. Our party is called Third Way Alliance Kenya. It's independent to the extent that it's neither aligned to Jubilee or NASA,
right.
And principally because we do believe that there is absolutely nothing new about NASA and Jubilee in this 2017 election. So we think that Kenya actually needs a new agenda. In fact, if you look at the number of people who are seeking to be president of this country, the last country was 18 of them as independents. That just tells you that there is actually a crisis of leadership in this country, and they're making a very big statement. And you can contrast that to, for example, what Jubilee has in the last 5 or 4 years has put on the table, and what the NASA brigade has been doing. In our honest analysis as Third Way Alliance, it's been about Rally, Lami, and the cartels. We want to talk about unga, mchele, and maji for the common mwananchi, and I think that's the reason why even last week we actually met up and discussed about the crisis that is in Kenya today, and therefore our focus really is more about how do we refocus our energies into those issues that actually affect Kenyans today. Our analysis is that the political contestation we see between those other groupings is about power. It's not necessarily about the price of unga today as we speak, the price of milk, addressing corruption, which is really taking away job opportunities for our people. It's been about mega infrastructure, and if you look at the history anywhere in the world, mega infrastructure alone, say for example SGR, Standard Gauge Railway, that do not really develop a country as such.
Let's talk about the merits of the different arguments a little later.
Yeah.
But Pete, let me bring you in. Tell me about your ideology and philosophy and why you're an independent.
Well, like Ikuru, I'm also a bit surprised that you call me
You
an
don't classify yourself as such.
No, I don't. I actually made a decision to get into this race very deliberately, very intentionally some months ago. And being part of one of the smaller political parties, which is RBK, Restore and Build Kenya,
right.
I sought to represent them in this race. And my decision to enter this really came after a lot of consultation. It was a few months ago. Many people said it was too late. But at that time, if you compare what has happened in the political landscape since that time, we had these two so-called horses building up, and people, the media was beginning to bill as a two-horse race. Many of those who had stood in the previous election, I'm talking Kiapi, Karua, Kenneth, Mudavadi, Muite, all these people had basically cleared and decided to either join one or the other, or just pull out. And what we had playing out was two horses, and then you had this empty space with a couple of people, and one of them was Ikuru, who I think launched out about a year ago, and you had Philip Murgo, who later pulled out. Dida was there, and a few sort of very light candidates who were talking about going into this thing. What we had was what I thought was a crisis building up then, a situation where we had two trains coming at each other, two very strong, powerful forces, with no alternative voice, and what looked like to me as a situation that could lead us into a crisis worse than what we had in 2007. So my decision was to offer myself, one, because I felt I have the qualifications for it. Number two, the country needs fresh leadership, new ideas, new thinking, and I decided that I would throw my hat into the ring.
All right, and Haman, you know, certainly they're not referring to themselves as independents, but perhaps the broader interpretation of an independent candidate has also now roped in the smaller parties, the fringe parties, the ones we don't see hitting headline news. What kind of chance do they realistically stand going into this election against the big two, if you like?
You heard my friend here say, like, he saw two trains coming and they were going to kind of, is it collide?
Yes,
and
on a collision
course. And he chooses to go in between.
Yes.
He might be crushed.
Oh my gosh, those are his chances to be crushed.
Yeah, so it's very difficult. But like Kuru said, I think it's not a question of winning. I think it's a question of making a statement. Because democracy is the best we have so far. It allows for the rule of law, constitutionalism, human rights, and expression of our human rights and other things. And therefore it must be protected, it must be defended. There must also be people to help us question the status quo. And you will agree with me, the status quo will include NASA and Jubilee. So if there are people putting the status quo on check, then it's good for the country. I don't think it comes down to winning.
Right.
However, progressive forces such as perhaps he stands for have come of age in some countries. You remember the Liberal Party in the UK. Sometimes it takes time, because when you have an established order being challenged, when, say, for example, there's space for multi-party democrats coming in, the progressive forces that seek to challenge and sit the sitting government always face challenges of quantitative nature. They are always fewer in number, qualitative but lacking quantitative. They have the ideas but lacking the numbers. So since we need the ideas, let's not be overly bothered about the numbers.
Right.
Let's give them space to articulate, and in the process they will help us grow our democracy.
Let's debate now on the basis of ideas, and I'll start with you, Ekuru. How fundamentally different is Third Way Alliance's thinking from that of Jubilee and NASA? And you had started this conversation talking about this being about roads, etc. But what's so wrong with roads? Don't Kenyans need development?
First of all, let me just make the correction slightly that we are not here just to make a statement. If Kenyans really considered our agendas together, they should be able to look at the fact that if there are candidates or political parties that are actually driving issue-based politics in Kenya today, it is the so-called small parties like Third Way Alliance, RBK, and many others. So we're not just here to make a statement. We are here to win, and we are here to tell Kenyans that this is the agenda for Kenya. Now, you say what's fundamentally different between us and them. To be honest, there is absolutely nothing different between Jubilee and NASA. We describe them as political Siamese twins. They are the two sides of the same coin. Let's pick for corruption, for example, or theft of public funds as we describe it in our political parties. The last 15 years, none of them can highball Kenyans and say, I am clean of corruption. So when you think about a Kuru Aukor's candidature, it's fresh, it is based on ideas, it has no baggage, and I think it's issue-based driven. When I look at the political rallies that these people mount, the numbers, it's absolutely no issue they talk about. It's about, we will beat them. We will make sure that they go home by 2 a.m. I mean 8 a.m. We beat them last time. They're just crazy. So I think for me there is no real agenda that drives Kenya forward. So what I want to do, and what I think my brother Pete is, we've really had a lot of conversation with him. Kenya lacks stewardship. It lacks leadership that can actually take it to a certain strategic direction. Now,
that's one issue you've talked about, corruption. What else is significantly different in what you're offering? Or rather, what are you offering Kenyans? So,
if the media was fair to us, the so-called small parties, you know that for the last 1 year, Third Way Alliance has put 5 key issues on the table. Number one is the proposal to end economic and social injustice, and therein we discuss about how do we industrialize economic opportunities in every part of this country. Talk about agro-processing, meat production, fish production, coconut, and all those things. And we actually have an elaborate plan on how to put money into people's pockets. In fact, we challenge the idea that in the 21st century that we should be importing maize from Mexico, and when actually we should be doing drip irrigation, parts of this country should be actually the food basket. I mean, if you had meat production, for example, in the so-called ASAL regions of this country, then you're able to put money actually into people's pockets.
So economic justice, you would say, is your pillar?
It's our pillar.
Okay.
Handling theft of public funds is another pillar. Taking women and youth into government is another pillar of ours, which I never hear either side speak about. As a matter of fact, as I speak to you right now, Jubilee government is unconstitutional. They never even respected the gender rule which they proposed, I think, in page 30 of the last 2013 manifesto. And the last one is for us protecting and implementing the constitution, devolution in particular, and the rule of law. If you look at devolution, we actually send money to develop people in the counties. All the 47 counties, 25 of NASA, 22 of Jubilee are thieves in equal measure. And it's not my words. You just need to look at the Auditor General report and see who is stealing. None of the leadership from either formations is condemning that theft of public funds, which is undermining education, health, and all the things that matter to Kenya.
Let's listen to your ideas, Peter, and how are they different from what we're hearing in NASA and Jubilee?
Well, let me begin by saying, Anne, that if you look at what's happening in the opinion polls, and I don't know how accurate they are, but as you walk around Nairobi or Kisumu or Nakuru, just talk to people generally, we are facing a situation where the public is so disgruntled at the moment, feeling so disillusioned, that in fact we have probably the highest percentage of people this year saying they're not going to vote. They're not going to vote because...
6% actually.
Well, that's an incredible number of people. Leave alone those who have aligned themselves with one or the other, but not because of conviction. It's more of a default, I can't vote for those people kind of a thing. And what they're seeing, and these are not dumb people who have gone through a cycle again and again and have seen a politics that is tiring. It's short term. It is, even now, this conversation we're having about food, it's what you call knee-jerk. We're dealing with issues of now rather than a strategic question of why do we have this problem in the first place. And
that's the fair point, but let's get to your plan. What's your plan for Kenya?
The plan is, one of them is exactly this agriculture, food security. Because food security is not rocket science. It's something that we actually should be able to sit down. We have the brains in this country. We have the land, we have the soil, we have the climate, and even the rains is sufficiently to be able to say, we want to get rid of this problem once and for all. Number two, we have a crisis that has been building up over the last number of years, especially the last 4 years, with our debt. We have reached a place where you could say we're actually hitting a crisis point. And if this was a business where your revenues are going down, your costs are going up, and you're beginning to borrow to keep your ship going, and you borrow to pay your current costs, and you're borrowing some more, and not borrowing to generate more revenues, but borrowing just to keep the thing going. We have a crisis there that needs a conversation in this country, and actually needs some legislation to be able to manage.
Okay, so food security solves public debt. What's the other? The
other is education. Education is clearly something that needs a whole overhaul. We have different levels of education in this country, especially public education, needs to be standardized. So with our devolution, if we're talking about somebody going to a public school, that person should get the exact same kind of education as anybody else who has gone to public school. Not that we have some higher tier public schools, lower tier public schools, and some that don't have anything at all, also called public schools. Those are three things that we want to look at.
Okay.
And of course, we want to look at the issue of I call it broadly prosperity. This is raising incomes. We have an unemployment problem that has come partly not partly, but probably largely because we have stopped being a producing country. We are a consuming country.
Right.
And that's actually just making us a spend country rather than a make and sell.
All right. Manyora, you've heard their ideas. And you heard Ekuru say we're not just in this to contribute ideas, we're in it to win it. And everybody would say realistically, what are their chances? Are parties such as the ones they represent and the larger independent movement stronger together?
Well, I don't know, but winning is not, if you want to go to State House, you do yourself a favor to remember that it's not a beehive. You know, a beehive, bees go in and out.
Okay.
Going to State House is a big thing. It's not something you can just sit here and say you can win an election.
But if they come together, We saw some movement around that, I think Thursday last week.
Yes.
We heard from the Mount Kenya Region Independents saying we're going to form a caucus, go into this election as a united outfit and wrestle with Jubilee candidates in Mount Kenya. Is that a strategy that can cause some trouble, if you like, for the big two?
At lower levels.
At lower levels.
For example, if this thing was taken to its full whatever, it is possible it can affect some gubernatorial candidates like Sonko, who was almost going to beat Kidero without any doubt. But if Peter Kenneth is part of this arrangement, and there's a Mount Kenya issue, where they are not only coming together, I think the hidden fact here, thing here is that they are trying to react against William Ruto. They believe it is Ruto responsible for their poor performance, that he kind of got them out of this through the primaries. So at lower level, that would be a big force. That will affect people at the gubernatorial level and other lower levels. But when it comes to the president, this country is majorly, for now, and it will take a little while, and something major will have to happen. For now, it is still the way you see it. It is still NASA and Jubilee, and you are not about to change it. It will take a lot more. And I was also giving them a lot more credit than they deserve.
Oh, is it?
Because I thought they have radical ideas. I've certainly have not seen any. Because if you talk about food security, in 2 words or 3, in half a sentence, can you tell me one radical thing you can do that will be a departure that will create food security in this country in 1 minute?
Well, let's have views from Pete, because that was your idea.
In 1 minute.
You know, we go around circles talking about the problems of agriculture. In fact, it's easier to talk about problems than solutions. I don't know if you call this radical, but when you've identified what the problem is, you need to be able to then come up with solutions, strategic solutions. One of the key problems, and this is an African problem, is that agriculture has continued to be a peasant exercise. It's been something that, farms are too small. We have a lot of land that is agricultural, but is producing food that is not commercial. It's still very subsistence. That's one of the things that we need to sit and take a hard look at and say, as populations grow, as we look at our nation going forward and the demands going on, we need to restructure.
What's the solution you're proposing?
Well, there's a lot of land still that is not being properly used for agriculture, that the government needs to figure out how to be able to.
But you're running for president, so what is your proposal if you were to form the next government?
I'm a leader, and I believe a president needs to focus his attention on the needs of the people. The needs of Kenyans today is that Kenyans are working around the clock like mad. These are farmers, and actually their produce is not generating them the income that they need to be able to get. We need to put together not a commission, as it were, but we need to put together some kind of a think tanks that would allow farmers to be able to open new markets, which we haven't got around to in the last several years. People are actually producing and not able to sell their goods.
Okay, so the idea may not necessarily be radical, but nonetheless that's the plan. Ekuru, you've been told that there's little chance that you're going to see State House in August.
Well, I will never dwell with the defeatist mindsets about the fact that Kenya cannot change. And I grant Manyoro that his view, and I respect that. I think for me, what we are here to do is to challenge even that dominant narrative, which is very wrong. And in fact, I think he is short of saying that leadership in this country and State House is only the path for those who can mobilize around tribe and negative ethnicity, because that's exactly what's happening. But leave alone tribe and ethnicity, how do you intend to mobilize? Listen, as I've said to you earlier on, that we are here to discuss ideas. If Kenyans today really listened to the issues that we are putting on the table, including this issue of food security, which I think both our parties are actually taking seriously on it. In fact, in Third Way Alliance, we are saying there is no way any river could drain its waters into the Indian Ocean when people are actually, are starving. We are going to divert those waters and make sure there is food security. And these days, you don't need rocket science to ensure that people have food. We are going to invest in people first. As a matter of fact, we do not necessarily believe that Kenyans will never eat this chuma and really you see with SGR that's being hacked. People need food first. So investing in people, first and foremost. We've talked about industrializing every economic opportunity in this country. For example, I've been to Luo Nyanza, parts of Luo Nyanza, Oma Bay. And from Fangana and Rusinga Island, they tell you that they pumped 7 billion into the GDP of Kenya. That was 2007. Yet there is no single fish processing plant in the entire Nyanza. And there is only one in Thika. And I think there's another big one coming in Meru. So the question really is, if you have a leadership that is really strategic, that wants to put money into people's pockets, you industrialize those economic opportunities. We nomadic pastoralists in northern part of Kenya are not poor. We are millionaires. But this government, or this country's governments in the past have never industrialized meat production, for example. So these are some of the plans that we have elaborately explained in our manifesto. Whether you call them radical or not, but I'm sure there are plans with proper leadership, stewardship. I think they will put money into people's pockets, because we know every 5 years there will be drought and famine in this
country. Both of you, do you intend to participate in the presidential debates?
Absolutely. I mean, why are we in this if we are not interested? And in fact, we wish that Kenyans will give us the opportunity and stop talking about 2 horse race. As a matter of fact, we at Padre Alliance are putting Angamia on the race, not just a horse.
The presidential debate?
You know, I want to come back to something. I know you're trying to wind up here.
Yes. I want to say something, Anne.
Yes, and I'll allow you that briefly, if you would.
My point is that both of us said something which you didn't follow up on, is that we have been talking. And we're talking also with others and looking at what is best for this country. And the issue that we're pursuing here is, it's not about me, it's not about Ekuru, it's not even about being president. Let me be clear about that. It's about what is best for this country. So as we go forward, we realize that as much as this is about winning, it's also about coming together and collaborating and building a bigger force.
Are you suggesting you will not be vying for the presidency?
I am suggesting that as we speak, whatever it will take to bring people together, because one of the reasons that a lot of coalitions, alliances and so on don't work is ego, precisely ego. We have a personality-driven politics in this country that has made it always very difficult for people to collaborate and work together. So one of the things that I want to take away from this conversation is that as we go into the next week, there are a lot of conversations. I was with a number of others even today. Talked to Joe Nyaga, Cyrus Jorongo, we had a conversation just a little while ago. There are others who are saying, what is it going to take for us to come together so that we're not all these, imagine 18 people running for president. It's actually quite ridiculous and requiring some thinking about the country rather than.
So you're willing to back someone, is what you're saying?
If it comes to that, I'm more than willing to do that, and I believe Ekuru is the same.
Yes.
I speak
for you. 10 seconds. Yeah.
You see, two things. One, I think you didn't get me wrong. Right, Ekuru. I didn't say that things will not change. Right. In fact, more than you, postponing. In fact, more than you, I believe the way things are going on in this country, and the way NASA and Jubilee don't seem to be any different from each other. The way they are taking the population for granted. At some point, may not very soon, there's going to emerge an alternative force in this country. Those will be the progressive forces I was talking about, and progressively with the time, we shall then have two parties. The conservative that would put all these people together and the kind of forces that I'm saying coming up. Except for that to happen, I am waiting to hear you articulate anything radical. For example, you cannot talk about food security without addressing the land tenure system. You cannot have people holding land for prestige and for prestige and for whatever. I agree. It's true. And people are dying. So you must radically address land ownership in this country. You see what I'm talking about? You must, you cannot allow people to commercialize seed.
Why must an idea, sorry, because I don't want us to get lost in the different ideas, but to the specifics of your point, which is it must be a radical idea to bring about a radical change.
And you carry people with you. People say,
say something.
People are talking about unga, and they are not addressing the question of land. Let's start with land. Then start with other things like, for example, how can a small economy like ours allow commercial seeds? And when you look at who is producing seeds for sale in this country, you keep quiet.
Okay.
You realize where the problem is.
Not just about ideas, it's about radical ideas.
Radical ideas that can see you are different. For now you want to do what these people are doing.
I can hear the music play. I can hear the music play. It means time is up.
25 minutes on, you don't expect us to exhaust our money. For example, the question we're talking about is one of historical injustices in this country. Land, like if you go to Taita Taveta, that's what our Senator Mwadali is addressing. We're actually proposing to take back this country's factory settings. Why is it that land in Taita Taveta is owned by almost 3 people?
Now that's the radical idea, Manyo.
We are questioning that, and I'm telling you, one of the things that we are putting on the table, don't just look at the usual guys and say Kenya will not change. I want you to look at Pete's, CV, look at Ekuru's, look at those other guys you are running with and say, who has got the capability even to inject thought, some philosophy into the leadership of this country?
That I can see.
There is no doubt about it. The issue
we are saying.
We are hoping that you are saying there is nothing else to bring on the table.
You are saying you want to go to State House in August, and I'm telling you it is not possible. Because you are dead on arrival.
I'm an optimist.
And you have the resources. And even with the resources, Ross Perot in America, a multi-billionaire.
It's not possible in order to perhaps possible someday. I'm not going to I'm out of time. Shake my hand.
Money doesn't.
Thank you for your time.
I didn't say it does. I said Ross Perot.
We've had an opportunity. Come on, Manora. We're out of time. We're out of time.
Give us 2 days to discuss this issue.
Oh dear. Heard that, boss? All right, we're out of time. We're back with the sport after this.